Hey, how's everyone doing? Happy Merfolk v Goblins Duel Deck Day. Today we're going to take a look at this Duel Deck and decide whether or not, well, we want to buy it or not. I mean, for you, obviously, it's up to you. For me, I've already purchased mine from TK Games, my local game store. Support your local game store. Now, the shtick is, let me be honest. Everybody that says they're going to review a duel deck or explain whether or not they're worth it, there's two ways to define worth it. The first, of course, is in straight financial value, which, of course, the duel decks do not and have not for a long time been, quote, worth it from a strictly financial rate. The product offering currently from Wizards of the Coast, I think, is a bit complex, or there's a bit of an issue with the new Planeswalker decks versus Merfolk versus Goblins versus any duel deck. I feel like they appeal to the same people, and not that you can't purchase both, but I think both decks, the Planeswalker decks and the duel decks, are a great option to offer us some reprints. In the past couple of years, there hasn't been any great reprints. Why are duel decks great for reprints? Because they're available everywhere, and they're about $20. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Target, you can get them at your local game store, just like the Commander decks. So they make themselves uniquely great, uniquely efficient at bringing us some low-cost reprints. In this case, with Warren Instigator and Master Waves, while two interesting cards, they don't offer us anything right off the bat to like purchase it off the store shelves. But I have recently changed my opinion on duel decks, and I think this one is actually worth it. Duel decks are great because they're two allegedly balanced decks that you can play against each other. Behind me in that gray box is a bunch of duel decks. Actually, the gray box over there. A wonderful Ultimate Guard box full of a bunch of duel decks. In the duel deck, you get two 60-card decks, 10 tokens, 2 deck boxes, the strategy insert, obviously the quick reference guide, and 2 spin-down life counters. So, in terms of casual players, kitchen tabletop players, or people that want to just have two well-balanced decks to play in a board game type scenario with people that, for example, haven't played Magic in a while or just enjoy Magic and just want to kind of have a casual match, I think the duel decks are great for that. In terms of a functional method to reprint cards that a lot of people want, you know, this deck isn't great. Now, if you are, like, for example, a Commander player and you want some alternate art, here we have our 2 spin downs. We have the standard Wizards insignia, so nothing really unique to like a duel deck specifically. That's kind of a miss in my opinion. We have our 2 kind of our quote commanders, but not really. The foil reprints. Here we have Warren Instigator, a double red Goblin Berserker with double strike. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you may put a Goblin creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. And then we have Master Waves, which saw standard play in the mono blue Devotion deck. 3 and a blue, protection from red. Elemental creatures, you get +1/+1. And whenever it enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 blue elemental creature tokens equal to your devotion to blue. Now, I think of these two, obviously, Master of Waves, in my opinion, is more powerful when it hits the battlefield. Let's look at the Merfolk deck. I know the professor would definitely like. Now, we have these deck boxes, which I think are much improved. Looks like they should hold the decks fully sleeved. Absolutely will hold these decks sleeved. That's a huge advantage. One drawback, where you have the duel deck anthologies, have the decks clearly labeled on the sidebar, like on the side of them. If you put this, there's really no way to know what deck this is without seeing the front of it. So while these offer literally no protection, they're the equivalent of a Ziploc baggie. I think they could still be decent if they actually said what the deck was. So that's kind of a miss. So let's look at the Merfolk deck. Now again, with dual decks, link in the description below if you don't have a local game store where to get one. There's no, like, these decks are, you can follow the link and also figure out exactly what's in there. So we have Harbinger of Tides, which is great for devotion. Master of the Pearl Trident, nice. Tidebinder Mage, Wake Thrasher, Merfolk Sovereign. And we hit Misdirection. That was a good reprint. Mind Spring, Cold-Eyed Selkie. No, in a devotion deck, you know, having Thassa would have been nice. I know it's not really like the thing. Another way to add values to these dual decks were if these were unique or full art. I like, you know, if they would have been full art, but I get it. We have Aquatic's Will, Essence Scatter, Tidal Wave, Claustrophobia. Triton's Tactics is a great combat trick. And we have the elemental tokens and our wall. In the Goblin deck, now, the very first tribal deck I ever built was actually a Goblin deck. Goblin King. Like, we don't have, you know, the Merfolk King, so to speak. And that feels weird. Same here. Like, do we have Goblin King? I don't know. Goblin Rabblemaster was actually a very expensive card in Standard for a while. Goblin Chieftain, which is very strong, giving other goblins +1/+1 in haste. Then Goblin Goon, Goblin Raise Runners, Krinko Mob Boss, very good. Relentless Assault. We've got Charbelcher. This is a nice reprint here. Goblin Charbelcher, Foundry Street Denizen, Bogger Brute. I have a feeling that the Goblin deck is going to be pretty powerful. I really, really like Tribal. I think it's a great way to get new players and returning players back into the game, which makes perfect sense as to why they're in these dual decks. We have Tarfire, Brute Strength. So we've got to kind of play him, turn him sideways. You have this Eldrazi type spell, which is great. Ghostfire, great spell. 3 mana, deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So a slightly more effectively costed Lightning Bolt, but super versatile. And you have 3 of them. Goblin Grenade. This is honestly my first deck that I ever won a tournament with. It was a burn deck that played 4 Disintegrates, 4 Lightning Bolts, 4 Fireballs, 4, I think, like Goblin Balloon Brigades, and 4 different Goblin. It wasn't really a Goblin deck. It was a burn deck that had Goblins to cast Goblin Grenade, because you could sacrifice a Goblin and deal 5 damage to target creature or player. Now, you almost never want to deal this to a creature. You want to be taking that to face. So we have Hordeling Outburst. Nice little FNM promo for a while. You know, in my personal opinion, based on what I know about these cards, I definitely think the Goblin deck is going to be very powerful. The Merfolk deck, I mean, it's got good cards. You know, I think playing these against each other will be fairly matched, but the Goblin deck is very aggressive. If you can stabilize, the way you stabilize in the blue deck is with all these Essence Scatters, 2 mana counter spells. Throw the Goblin deck off its curve, and then you cast something like Claustrophobia to slow down, you know, restabilize, and then build your forest. And then you have cards like Concentrate to draw cards and kind of pull away from the Goblin deck, where the Goblin deck is more play your cards, turn them sideways. And, you know, Goblin Chieftain is nice, but why isn't this Goblin King? Like, where's Goblin King? I want, you know, I don't know. That feels like a miss. Like, why isn't Goblin King in this deck? I mean, Goblin Chieftain seems a little bit better, actually, because it gives other goblins +1/+1 in haste, and I feel like Goblin King is just 1/1. But I don't know. from a flavor standpoint, I want to see the king, the most the Merfolk kind of leader versus the Goblin leader, and I feel like maybe they've changed over the years. But as an old time player, I wanted to see Goblin King in this deck. And what is the card? What is the blue card I'm thinking of? Merfolk. I'm going to look it up. I can't remember off the top of it. I know you're already typing it in the comments. Let's see. Oh, Lord of Atlantis. That's what I was thinking of. Like, Lord of Atlantis in this deck, it's a Lord, not technically a Merfolk, but all Merfolk get an Island Walk and 1/1. That would have been pretty rad in this deck. Now, is it on the reserve list, perhaps? I'm not sure what the latest printing of that card is, but I don't know. It would have been cool to have Lord of Atlantis and Goblin King, but that's probably just because I'm old. I think at the $20 price point, these dual decks are always worth a buy. You know, they're worth the buy because you're going to get kind of a unbridled battle where you don't have two decks that are like optimized beyond belief, but you get fair games of Magic. I've come a long way. I've come around a lot on dual decks after playing, having the dual decks anthology around and being able to play with another Magic player who hadn't played in 5 years, but being able to grab both decks and just say, let's pick a dual deck and go at it. And so for that, these are good. For straight financial value, you know, not as good. But overall, dual decks are a good product to keep around, I think. I wish I wanted to see them continue to push reprints into them. We have a lot of products going to be doing all of the product openings in November and December, as well as some vintage product, which is arriving tomorrow, and I can't wait for Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. We're going to have some exciting stuff to open. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.